I've been tasked with answering an incredibly complicated and difficult question, and that is people hear about all these audits going on in Arizona, Michigan, Georgia, and they say, Victor, what could happen as a result of these audits? Will Trump be put back into office? And there is a lot that goes into that, so let's talk about it. First things first, we need to understand there are a lot of possible outcomes. For starters, I know none of us like to hear this, but for starters, those audits could come back and say, hey, listen, nothing happened. We can't prove anything. Nothing happened. There was no fraud. There was no dirty deeds that were done. Now, I, for one, am not really inclined to believe that result because time decay, it's been literally months and months since the scene of the crime or the event of the crime. You wouldn't go and try and investigate a murder scene that is 4 or 5 months later. Odds are you're not going to find very much, incriminating evidence. So that's possibility number one, is that they come back and say, listen, nothing happened. And if that's the case, obviously nothing is going to change. Now, a second and slightly more interesting possibility is that, say, one state, say Arizona comes back and they say, listen, we found more than 10,000 bad ballots that we either can't confirm, they weren't, properly handled, or they're just outright fake. Say they found more than 10,000 ballots, and now the state of Arizona wouldn't be for Biden anymore. It would actually be for Trump now. Well, that's just one state. So we have to consider that the electoral count, one state being Arizona, is not enough to swing the electoral count back into Trump's favor. So we would need more than one state. So even if Arizona comes back and says, hey, listen, there was sufficient evidence of fraud to say Trump legitimately won our state, that state in and of itself is not enough to overturn the results of the election. But it does vindicate and add serious legitimacy to the claims that were made. And I suspect even if just the one state finds evidence of fraud, you'll see a domino effect where many, many more states want to say, hang on, wait a minute, they were right. And then they will initiate fraud or audits for fraud in their states as well. So that would be interesting. But remember, one state alone in and of itself is not enough to flip the results of the general election. Now, working off that first scenario where one state does it, say multiple states, right now we've got Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, say 3 states all come back and they all find evidence of fraud, and they say, listen, our states did not go to Joe Biden. Donald Trump was the legitimate winner of Michigan. Donald Trump was the legitimate winner of Arizona. Donald Trump was the legitimate winner of Georgia. Well, now, because the math adds up with those 3 states, Donald Trump in the Electoral College would be the legitimate winner of the race. But that in and of itself, you might say, aha, that's our ticket. Trump will be put back into office. And I wish I could tell you that that was clear-cut, black and white, the truth, but I cannot. The unfortunate reality is, even in the scenario where enough states to overturn the Electoral College results, even if enough states should have gone Trump, we have a really serious problem, being that there is no constitutional pathway for this. This is uncharted waters. We've never been in a scenario where something like this has happened. And to make matters worse, Congress certified the results of the election, fraudulent or not. They certified those results, and someone has been sworn in. That would put us in a really interesting constitutional predicament, because we know that there is no way to remove a sitting president outside of impeachment. Impeachment is a power of the legislative branch, but within the power to remove, the power to impeach, you don't find the power to replace. In fact, the Constitution lays out kind of a default where the Speaker of the House, in the event that both the President and the Vice President were removed, then the Speaker of the House is the next person that would come into office, which is Nancy Pelosi, and that probably just sent legitimate shivers down your spine at the thought of Nancy Pelosi being president. So we know that Congress could theoretically, in the face of all of that evidence, they could remove the ticket, they could remove Joe Biden and Kamala Harris from power, but we know that they don't get to pick who replaces them, and by default, Nancy Pelosi, in that circumstance, Nancy Pelosi would become president, and obviously that would not put Trump in office. So impeachment is not a pathway forward. It's not a constitutional pathway forward to put Trump back in office. So then what might be a constitutional pathway to get Trump in office? The only other possibility would be the court system. But we have to look at Article 3 of the Constitution, where the powers of the court are outlined, and nowhere in Article 3 do we find the court having the power to remove a president and replace him with someone else. So what could the court possibly do? Well, the good news in a certain way is that the court has never really let Article 3 limit their powers before. The court, in fact, a lot of people don't know this, a little bit of a tangent here, the Supreme Court does not constitutionally hold the power, the express power at the very least, to strike down laws of Congress as unconstitutional. It's a principle known as judicial review that you will not find written anywhere in the United States Constitution. I say that to bring up the fact that the court has not always given a crap what the Constitution says, and at times has taken the liberty to sort of make up its own powers. So theoretically, it is within the realm of possibility, I suppose, that the court would look at that evidence, they would look at what happened, and say, well, hang on, listen, we got the wrong guy in office. How do we have a system of justice if we're going to sit back for the next 3 years, 4 years, with the wrong man in the highest office in the land? So the Supreme Court could, in theory, say, listen, we have an understood and implicit power in the United States Constitution to implement justice. If we see a massive injustice like this, we have the implicit power to fix that problem, to right that wrong, to exercise justice. That is the only way that would even be somewhat backed in the United States Constitution for Trump to end up back in office prior to 2024. But on the topic of the courts, probably more likely than the courts being willing to do what I just described and remove and replace in the name of justice, more likely than not, even presented with all of the evidence, all of the proof, the undeniable proof of what happened, the court would more than likely say, listen, Congress failed. Congress certified bad results. It's not our power. It's not our job. So even in the face of straightforward evidence, undeniable evidence, the court is, in my opinion, most likely to literally say, we can't do anything about it, and leave it at that. They probably would not touch it. The obvious problem there would be that we would have the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, saying we recognize an injustice, but we are going to do nothing about it. Now, what would the American people do in the face of a situation like this, where Congress and the courts have said, well, there's nothing we can do about it. We acknowledge, we recognize, we admit that the wrong person is president right now, but we, the government, our hands are tied. We're not going to do anything about it. Well, I don't think that anyone would like that circumstance. I think that would be an agreeably terrible situation to have our whole country sitting there in disbelief watching the wrong man sit in office. But what legitimately would the people do about it? I don't know. But now, with that said, I do believe I have some idea, some inkling of a concept of what I think the founding fathers would have done given a situation like that. Now, you guys stay safe. God bless. Drop any questions you have in the comments, and I will do my best to answer them from a constitutional perspective. As always, keep me in your prayers. Keep your country in your prayers, and God bless.